If you pride yourself at being a multitasker, we are going to blow that myth out of the water today. Welcome to the UpSide Podcast, where we help you get unstuck in life and business by elevating your thinking and provoking meaningful change from the inside out. All right, let's talk about multitasking. You maybe have been like me in the past where I have prided myself at being a great multitasker. Maybe you have even put that on your resume. Skill set, multitasking. You've gone into interviews and they said, what are your strengths? And you've said, I am a great multitasker. You've prided yourself in this. Guess what? Multitasking is a myth. Here's the truth. If you are doing two things at once, you are actually doing neither. So there was a professor at Stanford University, and back in 2009, he did a study. So he felt like he personally was not a good multitasker. And so he wanted to figure out what is the difference between those who consider themselves good multitaskers and those who do not. So he did a questionnaire, divided 262 students, easy for you to say, into two groups. And there was one group that was considered the high-skill multitaskers and one that was the low-skill multitaskers. Guess what? The high, quote, multitasking group were the worst at nearly everything. The low multitaskers outperformed the high multitaskers in nearly everything that they did. Turns out, multitasking is just an opportunity to screw up two things at the same time. So here's the reality. Some of you are probably saying, but yes, I can do two things at once. I can walk and I can chew gum. I can walk and I can talk. Yes, you can do two things at one time. You can't focus on two things at one time. So I want you to think about juggling. Juggling is not actually multitasking because what you're actually doing is still one thing at a time. One ball goes up in the air, you catch it, the other ball moves to the other hand, the other one goes in the air. So sometimes we think that we are multitasking. What we're actually doing is activity switching. You're moving from one thing to the other thing, from one thing to the other thing. So your brain has channels, which is why you can walk and talk or walk and chew gum at the same time. The challenge comes in is when you are distracted on your phone and trying to drive at the same time. We think we're multitasking, and the truth is we're not really focused on either. So what happens when we're switching between activities? What are some of the things that lower our productivity? It actually is estimated that we lose 28% of our day just in switching from task to task. Another thing that happens is when you're switching from task to task, and I can see this happening in my own life, is you don't finish and you end up with a bunch of loose ends, right? You start a bunch of things, you progress on a bunch of things, and then at the end of the day or the end of the week, you realize you still have a lot of loose ends because nothing actually got across the finish line. When we are, quote, task switching, we also tend to get a distorted view of how long something takes because we are wasting so much time starting and stopping, starting and stopping. So a project that really should only take 30 minutes, we think it takes an hour because we're adding in that starting and stopping time. If we are task switching, we're also much more prone to make more mistakes or bad decisions. And it's shown that people who, again, multitask, or shall we say task switch, are more stressed, more anxious, and more burned out. So that in and of itself, to me, is a reason to start thinking, okay, maybe I need to put away the multitasking concept and really start to focus on one thing. So there was a psychologist who studied the idea of flow, and he developed the concept of flow. And that is a state where you are so locked into a task or to an activity that time disappears. Athletes might call this, or musicians, being in the zone. If you have experienced being in the zone or being in flow, it's really an amazing feeling because you are so highly productive in that time. So what happens and how do we get into flow in our daily work? Because if we had segments of time throughout our day that we were in flow or, quote, in the zone, our productivity would absolutely increase, our stress would go down, our fulfillment would go up, and it would be pretty incredible. So all that's great in theory. How do we actually create flow or create being in the zone in our lives? So 3 things have to be in place for you to get into flow. And the first one is the task has to be challenging enough to engage you, but not so hard that it panics you. Okay, so challenging enough to engage you, but not so hard that it panics you. For instance, there are certain tasks that are so mindless that you're never going to get into flow because you could almost do it subconsciously. Yes, you still have to focus, and if you don't, you're going to make mistakes, but you're bored. So to get into flow, you want a challenging project, a challenging task, but not one that creates panic or overwhelm. The second thing is you need to have a clear goal. You need to know exactly what you're working towards. What causes this to move forward? What makes this task finished? And then the third thing is you need uninterrupted time. And research shows that it takes roughly 15 to 20 minutes of any kind of uninterrupted work to get into flow. So part of the reason a lot of us don't experience flow ever is because we're never uninterrupted. Even if we're shutting the door in our office and no people are walking in, our phone is dinging, our email is popping up, we're picking up our phone, and we're rarely going 15 to 20 minutes with true uninterrupted work. So multitasking does destroy your flow. And so I just want to encourage you, if you feel like you're somebody that's bouncing back between a lot of activities, and the way I would look at this and say, do you have a lot of loose ends? Do you have a lot of incomplete projects? Do you feel like work takes you longer than it should to get completed? It's probably because you're not in flow. So make sure that you're doing projects that are challenging but not overwhelming, that you have a clear goal and understand what it means to accomplish and finish it. And then you need to have uninterrupted time. Build a bunker, put a sign on your door, set a timer. I mean, that can be a really great way to say, I'm going to work on this project for 30 or for 40 minutes. I'm going to turn off the notifications on my phone. I'm going to close out my email. I'm going to put my phone in another room. I'm going to have 40 minutes of uninterrupted time. I want to challenge you to pick one thing this week and do that and see what kind of results that you get. And my guess is you're going to be more productive. Your energy is going to go up. Your stress is going to go down. So the next time you're challenged to brag about being a multitasker, remember that you are not a multitasker. You are a focused and productive person. And as always, when you invest into your growth every single day, it is going to yield you great returns. Keep living on the upside. Be sure to subscribe at TheResaFlood.com for teaching guides that I send out every single week to help you internalize this. And you can also use this content to lead your groups and teams. As always, keep living on the upside.